Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. All right, folks, today's story is one for the you can't make this stuff up file. Imagine this. You've lived in your dream home for 2 years, settled in, made it yours, and then out of nowhere, the previous owner messages you asking to come dig up your front and backyard. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. They sold the house but want the plants back. This morning, I received a message that was, well, odd. It came from the previous owner of our home, someone we haven't heard from in nearly 2 years since we bought the property. The message was polite, but it stopped me in my tracks. They wanted to know if they could come dig up and take the hydrangea bushes from both the front and backyard. Yes, you read that right. They weren't asking for a few blooms, they wanted the entire bushes, multiple of them. These aren't just tiny garden store starters either. We're talking full-grown, mature hydrangeas that have been here for decades. Some of them are so massive they resemble small trees. They anchor the look of our front garden, and in the backyard they provide shade and privacy. They are quite literally part of the charm of this little cottage we call home. I reread the message a few times, hoping I misunderstood. Maybe they were just asking for a few clippings or to stop by and take some pictures of the garden for memory's sake. But no, they were very clear. They wanted to come and remove the plants, all because, according to them, these bushes are of sentimental value. Now, I'm not completely heartless. I understand that for many people, especially older homeowners, landscaping can carry a lot of emotional weight. Maybe they planted those hydrangeas with their children or as a tribute to a loved one. Maybe they watched them grow for years and feel a connection to them. That's valid. But here's the thing. If these bushes were that sentimental, why didn't you take them when you moved out? Or at least ask about them during the home sale process? We bought this home 2 years ago. We didn't tear out the garden or redo the landscaping, largely because it was so beautiful. The hydrangeas were one of the very first things I noticed when we toured the property. They made the place feel magical, like a little fairy tale nook hidden behind the hedges. They bloomed that first summer like they had something to prove. Massive clusters of pale blues and purples and whites, more beautiful than any bouquet I could buy. They've been part of our memories now. Family photos, backyard dinners, lazy Sunday mornings with coffee on the front step. They're ours. This is our home now. And while I'm not the kind of person who picks a fight over petty things, this doesn't feel petty. This feels like a pretty big overstep. To ask to remove landscaping from a home you no longer own? That's like selling your car and 2 years later asking for the tires back because they were your favorite brand. It just doesn't work that way. I thought about replying immediately with a firm no, but instead I took a beat. Maybe I was being overly protective. Maybe they were just grieving something and thought they'd reach out on a whim. But even so, it rubbed me the wrong way because once you open that door and say, sure, come by and take what you want from my yard, where does it stop? Do they come back next month asking for the rose bushes, the climbing ivy on the fence, the bird bath? If I give an inch, will they try to take a mile? I'm willing to offer a cutting, a fresh clipping they can plant at their new home, let it grow and nurture it like they once did here. That feels like a reasonable and kind compromise, but I'm not okay with someone coming to literally dig up a part of my home, especially after it's been mine for this long. And frankly, it bothers me that they thought it was an okay ask. Did they expect I'd just say yes? That I'd be thrilled to watch someone yank out the defining features of my garden? It's one thing if we just moved in and they were asking right away. Awkward, but more understandable. But 2 years later, that's not nostalgia. That's nerves of steel. It's not the plants, it's the entitlement. This house, this garden, these bushes, they're part of our lives now. I've pulled weeds around those roots, watered them through droughts, watched them bloom year after year. That's not something I'm giving up easily. I haven't written them back yet. I probably will soon. I'll be kind because I know better than to match audacity with rudeness, but I'll also be clear. The hydrangeas are staying right where they are. And if I do offer a clipping, that'll be my olive branch. But no one's walking into my yard with a shovel. Not today. Not ever. And our second story. My mom went to wish her ex-colleagues goodbye. An angry customer nearly turned it into Fight Club. Disclaimer. I'm sorry I can't remember all the details of everything once it all kicked off, and I was trying to distract myself as much as possible so I didn't get involved. Otherwise, I would have joined in. Anyway, story time. My mom used to work at Wilco's, RIP, and she took redundancy back in 2017 because they couldn't give her enough hours. But when the current and soon-to-be former owners took over, she was saying that the company would go bust, one of the only things my mom has ever been right about. A few days ago, my mom and I were in the Wilco's where she used to work, seeing if there was anything we could get at their closing down prices. After we were served, the cashier who helped us logged off the till, because there was no one else for her to serve, and started chatting with my mom and about 3 other workers, talking about not knowing when the store would close and wishing them luck for the future and finding new jobs. An older man who looked about 60 but claimed to be in his 80s came up to the till where we were all standing and started placing his shopping on the counter. One of the employees, who we'll call Kay, politely said, "I'm sorry, this till isn't open, but my colleague down there can serve you." The old man then complained about how you people have no common decency. At that point, I started biting my lip because I'm not the biggest fan of confrontation, and I was praying my mom didn't start an argument with him. She's known to do that. He then pointed at the 4 employees, the security guard who was just standing next to us, and me and my mom, complaining that there were 7 of us, but none of us were willing to serve him. I understand the frustration of 4 employees all chatting to each other, but it wasn't a huge inconvenience, and he shouldn't have escalated it to this level. Bear in mind the Wilco's uniform is a red polo shirt, and I was in a long-sleeve white shirt, and my mom was in a creamy blouse, so it wasn't as if we looked like we worked there. But my mom piped up and said, "I don't work here, and neither does this young gentleman," me. "I'm just wishing my ex-colleagues good luck for the future." This is where I started to distract myself, so I'm sorry if this feels like half a story. My mom then turned back to her ex-colleagues and started smiling. I glanced behind me to look at the old man, and we think, based on the way I was biting my lips and the fact that my mom went back to smiling, the old man then said, "Don't laugh at me or I'll punch your face in." At that point, another one of the employees kind of pushed him away and towards the other till, telling him not to threaten people while he was shouting, "I may be 80, but I can still smash your face in." My mom then ordered me to sit on a bench behind the security guard for my own protection. I personally think I could have handled it diplomatically if he came after me, but motherly instincts, I guess. Once he'd finished being served, he tried to come after my mom, waving his fists around like a cartoon character, which was kind of funny to see in real life. That's when the security guard actually stepped in because he was trying to hurt someone. The other employees walked away because they didn't want to escalate things, and the employee who had pushed him away went to the security guard asking for assistance. They didn't show up in time. Eventually, the old man just left. Apparently, he'd been coming into the store regularly before that, and he was just as rude those times. None of the employees liked him. I actually went back the next day, looking for stuff I could get cheap for my second year at uni, partially hoping I'd run into him and hoping he'd recognize me, but he wasn't there. I was talking to another one of my mom's ex-colleagues who heard about it secondhand and joking with the security guard about it, who did recognize me. And our next story. I asked a police officer to hold a soup pot mid-banquet. He thought it was hilarious. I currently work as a head waitress at a popular banquet facility that can host up to 2,000 people. Unfortunately, as parties that size only usually happen a few times a year, the venue doesn't employ enough staff to fit that number. Instead, it hires out from a temp agency, and we have workers that come in and help us serve the big parties. On those nights, I would have to train sometimes up to 15 new people on the spot to work that night. This was one of those occasions. The party we were serving was for a local police force a few counties over. Of course, that meant most of those attending were officers in regular dress clothes. The employee uniform for the venue included a black dress shirt, black dress pants, and a gold tie. The temp employees had the exact uniform with one difference: they had black ties. This would be the reason for all the confusion. Part of the food service includes family-style soup, which means a large pot of soup with a ladle is placed on each table, and the guests help themselves. We then replace them when they get empty. Now, replacing soup pots is a two-person job, as you need someone to hold the near-empty pot while you put the full one on the table. It's hard to explain without having a visual in front of me. Regardless, you need two people or else you have a high risk of spilling everything and getting burned. I was about to replace one of those pots when I see a gentleman wearing black dress clothes and a black tie standing next to one of my tables. Thinking he's one of my temps and being my socially awkward, apologetically polite self, in this case, would save me, I call to him, "I'm sorry, could you just hold this for me for a second?" He smiles widely and happily says, "Sure," and takes the pot. It takes me a total of 3 seconds to replace it with a full one, and when I turn back to him, I take the empty pot back and begin to thank him when I realize a barely noticeable dark gray decorative pattern in his dress shirt. I crap my pants and realize my mistake. "Thank you. Oh, crap, you're not one of my guys." He bursts out laughing, as does his table and several tables around us. I cover my face in embarrassment as he pulls me in for a hug and tells me to not worry about it. Once my embarrassment settles, we laugh for another minute, and for the rest of the night, that table and the three in my section surrounding it would tease me via reminding me they don't work there whenever I approach their tables. All in all, I got a good tip, and it was a good night. And our last story. HOA President tried to tear down my dad's wheelchair ramp. A while ago, my parents had to deal with a truly insane HOA president who lived next door. The woman seemed to think she had the right to govern every aspect of life in the neighborhood, and I'm not exaggerating. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer and became too weak to walk, my parents made the decision to install a ramp at the front door to make it easier for him to get into the house in his wheelchair. A simple, practical solution, right? Wrong. This is where the nightmare with our neighbor began. She, as the HOA president, went absolutely ballistic. She demanded proof that my dad truly needed the ramp, including doctor's notes and appointment slips. She even accused my parents of lying about his condition. As if this wasn't enough, when we went out of town for a couple of days, she actually tried to demolish the ramp. My dad was too weak to do anything, and my mom's pretty passive, so I had to step in. I was furious and threatened to sue her personally for harassment and unlawful interference. She eventually backed down, but the damage was done. After my dad passed away in April, I thought maybe, just maybe, the woman would back off. I was wrong. Just a week after the funeral home came to pick up my dad, she knocked on our door. And get this, she had the audacity to say that since my dad was finally dead, we needed to take the ramp down immediately. Those were her exact words. I had absolutely had enough at this point. I called the police right in front of her and reported her for stalking and harassment. I'd never seen her retreat so quickly. Since then, I moved in with my mom to help her out, and every time that woman sees me now, she runs into her house like she's done something wrong. It's honestly laughable at this point, but it gets worse. She's also been following neighborhood kids home from school, interrogating them about where they live and asking if they really live there. We've caught her multiple times peeking into our backyards as well. This woman clearly has some serious issues with boundaries. It's exhausting having to deal with her, but we've got our eyes open now, and we're not going to let her get away with anything more. Damn, that's sad. I can't imagine having the balls to say that to a stranger, because the chances that you can collect your remaining teeth on the very ramp you're complaining about is pretty big. How can someone be so damn cruel to a family clearly going through a traumatic time in their lives? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.